I have a social filter. Got a really big hole in it, but I do have.
Do we stand over there?
Okay. It's up to you. Just as long as we get all the people who actually did the work in. Like you guys that actually did the work.
Yeah, come on.
Those guys on the end.
Here.
Yeah, come on. All right, hey, my name is Michael Skiller, and I'm the commander of the Homicide Division here at the Houston Police Department. I have up here with me Lieutenant Zach Becker, one of our homicide lieutenants, along with some members of his squad, Sergeant Anthony Turner, Officers Brian Evans and Todd Tyler, as well as a couple other department representatives, Sergeant Alexis Magnan and Officer Joseph. I'm just going to give you a little quick background on why we're here. We're celebrating one of our victories here in Homicide Division. Talk a second about working with the community and how we treat everything the same. And then if you have any questions about the investigation itself, we'll open it up to the detectives who actually have the information. So back on July 29th, patrol officers received a person down call in the 1100 block of Katy Freeway. They arrived and found what they noticed was a transgender female that had no identification on her at the time. Medical examiner's office came out. We were unable to identify her. Over the next several days, the medical examiner's office used techniques they have, fingerprints, various other things. We looked at missing person reports, tried to identify her. We were unable to. A few days into the investigation, the ME's office put out a picture of the complainant, and very, very quickly, members of the transgender community here in town started calling in with tips. We were shortly thereafter able to identify her, and then the tips kept coming. The community called in with more tips. We were able to develop suspects, motives, and over the next several days after that, the detectives here in the Homicide Division were able to to develop suspect Josh Bourgeois. Did we have their picture? We have their pictures up here. Developed subject Bourgeois, and a few days after that, we're able to bring the case to conclusion by bringing charges of murder against him. As it turns out, Miss Williams and Mr. Bourgeois were boyfriend-girlfriend in a dating relationship. Apparently she was fixing to end the relationship. That pushed him over the edge, and he ended up killing her. And just what I wanted to take a second to highlight were a couple things, were community partnerships and how we treat everything the same. The first is the community partnerships, that without the community's help, without folks trusting us and calling in with tips like they did in this instance, not only would we may not have solved this, we may not even have the complainant's identity. But because we have built such a good rapport with the community, and folks are very good about calling and helping us out, is how we were able to get this solved so quickly. And second, about how we treat everything the same. That it doesn't matter to us if you're a member of Houston's transgender community, if you're a resident of River Oaks, or if you're homeless. We treat all homicides exactly the same, and everybody gets the exact attention that the next person does. So with that, I'm sure if you have any questions about the investigation itself, I'll yield the floor to the detectives who actually did the work.
Did the boyfriend know that, oh, were you about to say something?
No, go
Did
ahead.
the boyfriend know that Ms. Tracy was transgender?
Yes, he was aware of that.
So the motive, can you describe a little bit more about the motive, about what really led up to the incident?
Essentially, she threatened to end the relationship on the evening of the assault, and he threatened her in turn when she advised that she was preparing to end the relationship.
And then, has he, since his arrest, has he talked about, has he confessed, has he talked about what he did or did not do?
Well, we actually located him. Actually, Sergeant Magnan provided the assistance in locating him, and subsequently having him brought to our headquarters, where he was questioned, or at least provided the opportunity for questioning, which at that time he invoked his right for counsel. So we advised him of the fact that he was going to be charged with the murder.
Where was he found?
I'd have to actually defer to Sergeant Magnan on that.
He's at the Yark Young Adult Resource Center in Midtown, just off of McAllen.
That's a shelter?
I don't know that it's a shelter. It's a resource center for homeless youth, kids that need services. They go there to get haircuts, food, help with housing, social services, things like that. and they're out there playing basketball.
Is there any word as to the relationship between the two? Was it a volatile relationship? Did they have arguments a lot?
It was explained to us that they were in a dating relationship for approximately 3 months, and during the course of that relationship, there were a number of volatile verbal arguments and as well as some physical altercations that had taken place.
Can you speak a little bit to the fact that in Houston's transgender community, that they're concerned about the fact that there has been so many transgender murders in the country? I think their count is, the active count is about 16, and the overwhelming majority of them are African American females, and they're worried about that, and they're worried about trying to sort of stem the tide. Can you speak to that?
I personally can't, but Sergeant Magnan can.
Sure.
Yeah, can you step to the mic?
Sorry. Transgender women of color face disproportionate levels of violence, both domestic violence situations. They're also victims of hate crimes. There are a number of factors. I'm not a criminologist, so I won't go deeply into those, but there are a number of factors that place these women at higher risk. And there's a tremendous amount of fear in the community, whether it is a hate crime or an interpersonal violence situation like this. And so a lot of what my partner E.J. Joseph and I do as LGBT liaisons is we go out and we talk to the community about ways to try to enhance their safety, personal safety tips, things like that, to try to reassure them. But we are also working to build that trust so that when something like this does happen, or even before something like this happens, they do come to the authorities and try and get some assistance.
Do you have any suggestions for transgender women of color in the Houston area?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of these apply to everybody, but remaining vigilant, being really aware of your surroundings everywhere that you go, strength in numbers if you're going to go out at night or even during the day, you know, having a friend go with you, things like that. Don't be looking down at your cell phone as you're walking around. Keep your head on a swivel. Domestic violence is a really big problem. I know nationally and in Houston we have a pretty big problem, but within the LGBT community and the transgender community in particular, there are tremendously disproportionately high rates of domestic violence. So people need to educate themselves about the risk factors for domestic violence and work to safely remove themselves from those relationships as quickly as possible. And report crimes, which is a big hurdle that we face because of some of those historic trust issues.
And it's not, and gender identity is not a hate crime in Texas, right? And that plays a role because you can't charge him with a hate crime in this case.
Well, a hate crime, there would need to be a bias motivation or a bias motivator. And so because our understanding is that this was the end of a relationship, this was a domestic violence situation, the fact that she's transgender on its own does not create a hate crime situation. And so I am not in the position to make a judgment on that, but based on my assessment of the facts at this time, this is not a hate crime situation.
Will we be able to hear from the family? Is there anything they want to tell us about how she was on a daily basis, about her character? What do they want her legacy to be remembered as?
Do we want to bring the family up, or? It doesn't seem that they're interested in that at this time, so you can reach out to them at a later time.
Oh, and what was the situation about whether or not he was homeless and she was living, like, what was that, did that situation play a role? Were they cohabitating? Can you speak to that a little?
I'm not aware that they were cohabitating at all. He was homeless and may have been spending some time staying with her. I don't have any information about that. She was not homeless, based on the information that we've got at this time.
And do you know how they met?
I'm not sure.
No.
I want to say that he was not homeless, number one. No, he was not. I don't know where that's coming from. When I went to Star of Hope to get housing for myself and my kids, he was rejected because of his age is how he ended up at the Covenant House.
Can you speak to us?
She's speaking about the victim, her son. Was there anything you would like anything you want to clear up about your son?
I just want to clear up the homelessness is not correct. This is his roommate right here. Even though he wasn't in my house, he was on the lease with her. So where this homelessness comes from, before getting the house that I have now, the shelter that I went to, they wouldn't accept his age bracket.
You don't want to say it up here on the mic, so
Can
you
you
can
just
let
speak up
everybody
here so
know.
we know what
You
you're,
will?
you mind coming up here and saying it? To clarify your.
Yeah.
Just, clear your son's
We're going on best information that we had from people that we talked to in the community, and so we certainly don't want to make any remarks that would lead Mom to believe that we're making disparaging remarks. That's just the best information that we had, and so, you know, she had a whole life that we don't know about until those facts are brought to us. And we certainly don't want to upset Mom, but we know that even homelessness is a very fluid situation, and so some people may have known Tracy better, some people may not have, and so we're just working with what we've got.
And how did you guys break the case with tips from the community?
The community was a huge help. This case was made by the community. Our homicide detectives did an incredible amount of work following up on leads, working with witnesses, doing everything that they could to get her identified, to get next of kin identified, get our suspect identified, and get a real timeline and a real sense of everything that happened in this case. But the community made this case. We reached out as soon as we knew that we had someone who was unidentified to different community partners that we work with on a regular basis to let them know what the descriptors were and to let them know that we had found someone who was deceased. They immediately put that information out, and within an hour we started getting our first tips. And within 2 days we had Tracy identified, we had next of kin identified, and we had information leading us to believe that Joshua Bourgeois was the suspect.
And did Mr. Bourgeois have any criminal history?
He does have criminal history. I don't have it in front of me, but he does have some criminal history. Yes, ma'am.
And sorry, what's your first name?
Alexa?
Mom, what would you like to say about, to clarify for us, make sure we have the right information?
The victim, my son, Trevion, was not homeless. Being a part of the gay community, Grace Place, York, the Montrose Center, those were places that he went to be a part of his community to get assistance in anything he may have needed assistance in at these places. At the time of his death, he was on the lease with his best friend. Okay, the Covenant House has stepped up, but the Covenant House is not a place where he was before he died. Did he visit people there? Maybe so.
What would you like for us to know about your son?
He was all around good kid, for the most part. He was a very good child to an adult. His smile, his personality, the way that he was, and how he wanted to make everybody laugh, that's just his spirit. That's the type of person he was. So,
How does it make you feel knowing that so many people assisted in finding, the person who did this and brought justice for your son?
the so many people were the community. And that same community was around him every day, even if he wasn't with me and his brother. So 99% of his actions were seen. A lot of things were spoken. People heard a lot. And they helped them to investigate the case to where they got the guy that actually did it.
But
It wasn't a family member or a friend that helped to get this guy. It was the community.
And I would imagine that would make you feel a little sense of hope in this situation since he was tragically taken away, that so many people did step up to the
Oh yeah, I'm very grateful and thankful.
Any other questions?
Can you state your first and last name for me?
Joyce Williams.
Joyce Williams?
Okay, thank you. I can send it to you. I can send it. Yeah, you want to just give me a card now.
Totally like she wouldn't do that to the Bible. Very, even at the funeral.